There are moments when you stand in the midst of slander, betrayal, or insult. Every instinct urges you to speak up, to prove yourself, to strike back, but then you realize, the more you explain, the more they doubt. The more you react, the more you lose your composure. And the harder you try to defend yourself, the deeper you fall into the trap they've set. In a chaotic world where everyone is shouting to be seen, silence becomes a strategy, not of weakness, but of strength. Silence does not mean surrender. It is when you place the truth in the hands of time and allow the universe to deliver its own justice. When you do not react, do not justify, do not retaliate, you reclaim control. In today's video, we will walk through 7 moments in life where silence speaks loudest, a firm choice to protect your dignity, conserve your energy, and let karma take care of the rest. 1. When words lose their weight against character. Have you ever been in a situation where someone spread falsehoods or outright lies about you? You knew what they said was completely untrue, even malicious. But the more you tried to explain, to clarify, or to defend yourself, the weaker you felt. Every word you uttered was distorted, doubted, or worse, used as evidence that you had something to hide. In that moment, you realized, there are places, people, and circumstances where truth is no longer measured by what is said, but by how you live each day. And that's when you must choose. To speak for clarity or to live with clarity. The truth is, when someone deliberately twists your image, they do not do it because they don't know who you are, but because they want you to lose yourself. Their goal isn't truth, it's control. They don't need logic, they just want to see you lose your composure. So each time you react, you don't regain trust, you only prove that you've been wounded. And in the eyes of onlookers, that pain is often mistaken as proof of guilt. It's a harsh reality, but a common one, especially in toxic environments where drama outpaces reason and emotions override fairness. Stoic philosophy teaches, if it's not true, don't speak it. If it's not right, don't do it. This is not just moral advice, it's a life strategy. When you know you've done nothing wrong, you don't need to prove it with words. Show it with your bearing, a calm that cannot be shaken, a steadiness that does not waver, and a silence that holds everything you stand for. Your unshakable presence becomes the strongest rebuttal to falsehood. Because words can be twisted, but character cannot. A person who lives rightly, acts with integrity, and refuses to stoop to pettiness will sooner or later be seen for who they truly are. Picture someone who walks past slander without a word, quietly continuing their work, living out their values. They don't need to shout, "I'm innocent," because their life says it for them. They don't run around trying to explain because truth doesn't need to be yelled. It just needs to be lived. While the one spreading rumors keeps clawing at you from the mud of doubt, you've chosen to stand still, on the ground of dignity and inner stillness. And it's that very stillness that unsettles them more than any rebuttal ever could. The story of a man falsely accused by colleagues at work illustrates this well. He was rumored to be dishonest, ostracized, even distrusted by superiors. Everyone expected a loud defense, a dramatic clearing of his name. But instead, he showed up on time, did his job, never complained, never badmouthed anyone. Everything he needed to say was expressed through professionalism, thorough reports, and consistency in his demeanor. In time, the one who spread the rumors was exposed for past workplace misconduct. Without uttering a single word in self-defense, the truth revealed itself. And the man who stayed silent didn't just preserve his dignity, he gained deeper respect. In such a case, silence is not avoidance, and it is not weakness. It is self-command. It is an intentional act. Your refusal to play a game you already know cannot be won through debate. In Stoicism, serenity in the face of slander is the highest form of inner strength. Because you are no longer ruled by emotion, nor do you feel the need to prove anything to those unwilling to understand. Remember, you cannot control what others say, but you can always control how you live. And if you live rightly, time will become your greatest ally. Let the falsehoods rot in the air. Let your daily actions silence the noise. And let your demeanor, your composure, your consistency, your peace be the answer stronger than any spoken word. Because at some point in life, you'll realize what people believe doesn't come from what you say, but from how you choose to live. And that is true power. 2. When one door closes, it's time to move forward. No one enters your life without leaving a mark. Some come to teach love, some test your patience, and some are just meant to stay briefly, regardless of whether you're ready for the goodbye. But what breaks people isn't just departure, it's betrayal. Betrayal is when you offer your trust and someone uses it to hurt you. It doesn't come from enemies, but from friends, family, people you once believed would never turn away. And so, it's not just a loss, it's a quiet shattering of the soul. When faced with betrayal, our first instinct is always to question. Why did they do it? What did I do wrong? Do they regret it? Can this relationship be saved? A flood of questions spins in your mind, pulling you into a spiral of self-doubt. But the cruel truth is, the more you seek answers, the deeper your wound becomes. Because those who betray rarely see themselves as wrong. They've already justified their actions, framed them as necessary or justified. So no matter what you say, nothing changes what they already decided. Trying to understand betrayal is like sewing a torn fabric. It only reveals the seams more clearly. This is when you must ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth clinging to a bond that's already decayed? Worth holding on to someone who's clearly shown they no longer respect you? Stoicism teaches us that every hardship is a chance to refine virtue. Betrayal, though painful, is not an end, but a signpost to see the world and yourself more clearly. The Stoic does not beg those who wish to leave, nor do they flee pain. They face it, observe it, accept it, and move on. There was a woman named Anna who had trusted her best friend for over 15 years. They grew up together, shared highs and lows, but one day, Anna discovered her friend had quietly sabotaged her work out of jealousy. Her first response was shock, anger, the urge to confront. But after many sleepless nights, Anna chose a simpler way. She walked away. No explanations, no angry calls, no tears, no blame. Just one last message never sent, and a quiet decision not to return. Months later, the friend reached out with apologies and excuses. But by then, Anna had moved on, both in place and spirit. Her silence wasn't hatred, but deep self-respect. She understood, if a door has closed, there's no need to keep knocking. Some doors close not for someone to return, but to show you it's time to go. Being hurt doesn't make you weak. Not reacting doesn't mean you've given up. It is strength. It is self-command. It is the silent message that says, I respect myself enough not to beg for someone's affection. When you walk away without needing to explain, you force the other person to face the absence you leave behind. And that silence, that absence is what lingers, what unsettles, what delivers the real consequence. Stoicism does not teach us to suppress emotions, but to master them. When someone betrays you, you don't have to forgive, nor must you hate. You only need to understand they chose their path, and you can choose yours, one without them, but filled with peace. And that peace comes from no longer clinging to what's already over. Forgiveness doesn't always require words. Sometimes it's just a nod, a quiet smile, and a step forward without looking back. Finally, remember, no one can betray you unless you give them that power. And once they have lost the privilege of being in your life, you don't need to punish them. Let silence and distance be the answer. Because sometimes the greatest lesson a betrayer learns is not being forgiven, but being left behind in silence. And that is how you move on, not to escape, but to grow. 3. When wisdom lies in remaining calm. There are countless moments in life when you feel the urge to snap back, to react instantly, to strike back in order to protect yourself. A baseless jab, a sarcastic comment in front of a crowd, or a blatant act of disrespect from someone who knows nothing about you. All of it can easily ignite emotions like wildfire, burning away the last remnants of patience. But it is precisely in those moments that you're offered a choice. You can either react instinctively and lose control, or choose calm and retain all your power. People often confuse reacting with resisting. Reacting is immediate, instinctive, emotional. It happens before reason has a chance to speak. Resisting is deliberate, chosen, a mindful act. But sometimes the most effective resistance lies in no words at all, in a cold silence, in standing still amidst the storm, refusing to let emotion dictate your actions, refusing to be dragged into someone else's mud. That serenity is the clearest sign of wisdom. Silence is not weakness. It's strength enough to not need a voice. Not reacting is not submission. It's maturity that understands the cost of letting emotions take the lead. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." The phrase sounds simple, but it carries an entire philosophy of life. When someone insults you, they're sending you an invitation to step into a conflict they've already prepared. If you get angry, if you react, if you lose composure, you've accepted that invitation. And once you enter a game controlled by others, you cannot win. But if you decline, if you stay grounded, then the only one who fails is them, because their sole goal was to disrupt your peace, and they didn't succeed. A common example is in the workplace. You work hard, perform well, and then a jealous colleague throws a cutting remark during a meeting. Looks like anyone can get promoted these days. All eyes turn to you, waiting to see your response. You could snap back, argue, defend yourself, or you could smile gently, nod, and carry on as if the remark never existed. In that moment, you not only preserve your composure, but show the entire room who truly holds control. The one who insulted you expected drama, disruption, a reaction that would confirm they'd struck a nerve. But when you stay silent, when you don't show you've been shaken, they're the ones left confused. They don't know what to do next because they didn't get the response they craved. And in that silence, they're forced to confront their own pettiness. Stoicism doesn't ask you to endure everything blindly. It teaches you to choose battles that matter. You don't need to speak up every time you're provoked. You don't have to prove you're right in every situation. Some confrontations only drag you down to the level of those who offend. And when you step into that mud, no one can tell who's who anymore. Staying calm isn't surrender. It's your way of reminding yourself that no one out there has the right to dictate your state of mind. You alone choose how to respond, and you choose silence, not because you don't know what to say, but because you see no reason to say anything at all. Someone once said, if you react to every insult, you're giving everyone control over you. Imagine if every sharp word required you to speak up. Prove yourself, correct the narrative. Your life would become nothing but a string of useless battles. But if you learn to let silence speak for you, you not only conserve your energy for what truly matters, but also show others that you cannot be easily manipulated. 4. When others perform, don't be the audience. Life has no shortage of performers. They don't seek truth, don't want dialogue, and have no interest in resolving problems. They only want a stage, and they need one audience: you. They script the narrative, rewrite the story, erase their own role in the fault, exaggerate their own pain, and cast you as the villain in a tragedy crafted to perfection. The tragedy is, if you react, you've entered their performance. And the more you try to prove your innocence, the more you look like you're covering something up. In the eyes of outsiders, emotion outweighs reason. And the one who cries is always believed, even if they were the ones who started the chaos. There are people who know how to make others feel guilty. They're the victim in every story, the wounded party, even when they were the first to harm. They'll cry in front of others, talk about you like you're heartless, stress that you didn't understand them, hurt them, or betrayed their trust. They selectively pick details that suit their narrative, omit context, hide their own actions, and paint a distorted image of you for one purpose: to gain sympathy. And when you step in to defend yourself, to explain, to tell your side, you've unwittingly legitimized their script. Because to the audience, you're now the one attacking a vulnerable soul, someone hurt and crying. And just like that, you've lost, not because you were wrong, but because you accepted a role in their play. Stoicism teaches, it's not what happens to you that harms you, it's how you react to it. When you step into someone else's narrative, they don't need to be right, they just need you to lose your calm. And if you let emotions guide your actions, if you respond in anger, if you say things you regret, their performance becomes more convincing. They'll use your own words, your resistance to paint you as cold, domineering, incapable of empathy. Meanwhile, they'll keep performing, using your silence as proof that you're ignoring their feelings, using your logic as proof that you don't care. And so, in this emotional chess match, you're defeated by your desire to be understood. There's a story I once witnessed. A woman named Rachel had a co-worker who constantly played the victim in front of management. Any time she was given feedback, she would cry, blame her circumstances, claim she tried her best, and say the environment was too harsh. But behind the scenes, she was consistently late on deadlines, avoided responsibilities, and gossiped about others. When Rachel gave constructive feedback, she was labeled as difficult, too harsh, and someone who hurt others' feelings. The more she tried to explain, the more she was isolated. Then, one day, she stopped. No more explanations, no more defending, no more justifying. She simply did her job, stayed within her boundaries, and said nothing. Over time, people began to see. The poor victim was in fact two-faced, and Rachel, by not participating in the drama, kept her self-respect. In this case, silence wasn't surrender. It was wise refusal. The refusal to take part in a game you can't win with reason. When others start performing, you don't have to react. Just observe. Stay outside. Let them carry their narrative alone. Because without your presence, their act falls flat. And every performance without an audience must eventually end. Stoicism doesn't teach indifference. It teaches discernment. It helps you know which emotions are worth keeping and which are being used against you. When someone manipulates you with tears, with sob stories, with exaggerated pain, they're not seeking truth. They're seeking control. And the only way to stay whole is to not give them the reaction they want. Don't justify. Don't cry. Don't ask, "Why did you do this to me?" Step away from the role they wrote for you and return to your true self, a person who doesn't need to perform to be respected. 5. When your presence is taken for granted. There is a kind of hurt that doesn't come from harsh words, betrayal, or insult, but from prolonged indifference. The kind that comes from those you once cared deeply for, from relationships you once nurtured daily without keeping score. It's when you're always the one to message first, the one to check in, the one who tries to keep the connection alive, the one who apologizes even when you've done nothing wrong. And then one day you stop. Not out of anger, not to punish anyone, but because you suddenly realize, if you don't speak up, no one will ask where you've gone. The truth is, people often don't realize the value of something until it's gone. When you're always there, they assume you always will be. They begin to see your presence as a given, requiring no gratitude, no effort in return, no need to be preserved. They start to see everything you do as obvious, as what you're supposed to do, as simply how you are. And from the moment they stop thanking you, stop paying attention, stop listening, they've already started losing you bit by bit without even noticing. Stoic philosophy doesn't teach you to seek validation from others, but it does teach you to know when to stop, not because you no longer care, but because love should never be a one-way road. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Don't waste time debating what a good person should be. Be one." But remember, being good doesn't mean others have the right to take you lightly. You can give freely, but no one should assume you'll always be there. You can be forgiving, but that doesn't mean you must stay in a relationship that makes you feel small. There was a man named Jake, the kind of person everyone wanted as a friend. Kind, thoughtful, always remembered birthdays, always checked in when someone went quiet, always made the effort to mend things when the connection began to fade. But after years, Jake began to notice. If he didn't reach out first, the people who once called him a friend simply disappeared. If he stayed silent, those relationships drifted into oblivion. And that moment hurt, not because he lost friends, but because he realized he'd never truly been held on to. Jake chose the simplest path. He stopped. No explanations, no blame, no final words. He simply stopped sending messages, stopped checking in, stopped showing up in the lives of those who never saw his presence as something to cherish. And what happened next gave him the clearest answer. Those who truly valued him found a way to reconnect. The rest stayed silent because his absence left no space in them to be filled. Stepping back is not a silent treatment, nor a demand for attention. It is an act of self-respect. When you're no longer certain your presence is appreciated, the best thing to do is let others experience your absence. And if they don't notice the difference, if they feel no need to reach back, then you have your answer. You never truly had a place in their hearts the way you thought. Stoicism teaches that your value doesn't come from others seeing it, it comes from your own awareness of it. But this philosophy doesn't require you to suffer in silence forever. You can walk away quietly, without resentment, and still preserve your kindness. Because the strong don't need to punish or retaliate. They only need to know when it's time to stop and to leave firmly when their worth is no longer seen. Your presence is not a given, it's a gift. And if someone treats that gift as ordinary, let them feel the void it leaves behind. Don't try to explain your worth to those unwilling to listen. Don't keep sowing into soil that will not grow. And don't let your heart ache over someone who never knew how to love properly. 6. When your reaction is what they want. Some people don't come to talk, to connect, or to understand. They come to provoke. They don't actually care what you think or how you feel. The only thing they crave is a reaction. They want to see you angry, off balance, out of control, just so they can prove you're no better than them. And if you give them that, you've not only lost your calm, you've handed them exactly what they wanted: control over your emotions. We often think malicious people aim to hurt us with words, actions, or insults. But the deeper truth is, they don't want to hurt you directly, they want you to hurt yourself. And the easiest way to achieve that is to make you act out of emotion. A sarcastic remark, a public jab, a deliberate provocation, all designed to push you out of your calm. And if you yell, lose your temper, or strike back, then you're no longer yourself. You've been controlled. Stoicism teaches, you cannot control others, but you can control how you respond. That means when someone provokes you, you always have two choices. 1. React like a puppet on a string, losing yourself in impulse. Or 2. Remain calm, like someone who knows the value of self-mastery and refuses to play someone else's game. And the beauty is, the choice is always yours. Imagine you're in a meeting and a co-worker who constantly undermines you throws out a snide comment. Someone sounding confident today must have memorized the script well. The whole room turns to you, waiting to see your reaction. You could snap back, start a heated exchange and derail the meeting, or you could smile, nod gently, and continue speaking as if nothing happened. In that second option, you not only preserve your dignity, but you make the other person feel small because they expected a fight and you refused to give them one. And that refusal was your strongest reply. When you don't react, you don't lose. You take control. The provocateur rarely stops after one try. They'll keep testing you, trying different methods, going for the most subtle and personal attacks. But if you stay steady, unshaken, untouched at the core, they receive a clear message. I won't be pulled down. My emotions are not yours to touch. Remember, every time you stay calm under pressure, you build a psychological armor. No one can provoke you unless you allow it. No one can wound you unless you assign meaning to their words. The wise aren't those who've never been insulted. They're those who don't react instinctively when insulted. They understand. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's the way to remain whole. Adam was an employee at a large firm, constantly provoked by a co-worker's passive-aggressive comments. At first, he responded. He defended himself, argued back, tried to prove the rumors wrong, but the more he reacted, the more exhausted he felt. Until one day, he chose a different path. Silence. When jabbed, he simply smiled, carried on, and said nothing. At first, the provocations continued, but eventually they stopped, because with no reaction, no stage, no audience, who was left to perform for? Stoicism doesn't make you passive. It teaches you which battles are worth fighting. You don't have to respond to every provocation. Some things are best met with a calm gaze, a deep breath, and a steady step forward. Because if a reaction is what they seek, then silence is what they fear most. And in the end, always remember, not everyone who touches you deserves a reaction. Not everyone trying to provoke you deserves your emotions. Sometimes your serenity is the mirror that reflects their pettiness. And when you don't respond, you don't lose. You win through self-command. 7. When the absence you leave becomes the answer. Some people only begin to see your worth the moment you are no longer there. When you've been silent long enough, stepped back far enough, and let go completely, the things they once dismissed begin to feel noticeably absent. They start to miss the way you listened, the sound of your encouragement, the small gestures that once made them feel safe, without them even realizing it. But when those things were still present, they saw them as given, a presence requiring no gratitude, a kindness needing no reciprocity, a loyalty assumed, not cherished. And then you vanish. No accusations, no dramatic signs of rebellion, not even bitterness. You simply withdraw, quietly, gently, and completely. You stop initiating, stop checking in, stop showing up. You don't need theatrics or a grand ending, because your silence alone creates a void they are forced to confront. The space you once filled with care is now hollow. They may deny it, pretend nothing's wrong, but deep inside they feel it. Something meaningful is gone. The emptiness you leave behind is not like the absence of a stranger. It is the missing piece of something once familiar, warm, and deeply sincere. And so, that absence cannot be replaced by shallow connections, brief conversations, or belated apologies. It compels them to reflect, not just on you, but on themselves. What did they do to lose someone like you? How careless had they been? How passive? How indifferent? And in that moment, they realize they haven't just lost a relationship, they've lost a chance to be loved with genuine depth. In Stoic philosophy, Epictetus once said, "No one is free who is not master of himself." And you are only truly free when you no longer let your emotions cling to what no longer deserves you. When you've given too much, endured too long, remained silent too often, and finally come to understand, the only thing left to do to be heard is to leave. Not to be noticed, but to preserve your self-respect. Olivia was a gentle woman, warm-hearted, always putting others before herself. In a years-long relationship, she was the one who held things together, who texted first, who apologized after every argument, even when the fault wasn't hers. But the more she gave, the more she received coldness. Her partner grew indifferent, treated her love as expected, stopped caring, and stopped protecting what they had. One day, Olivia said nothing. She wasn't angry, didn't make a scene, didn't demand change. She simply withdrew, stopped initiating, and left the relationship with a strange calm. In the first few weeks, he didn't notice. But gradually, the small things became apparent. No more good morning texts, no one checking in when he felt sick, no quiet presence standing behind him in support. And he started texting, calling, regretting. But Olivia no longer responded, because she understood. If someone only realizes your worth after you've walked away, then their regret isn't reason enough to return. You don't need a dramatic farewell to be acknowledged. Sometimes, all you need to do is disappear and let the silence speak for you. Because if your presence wasn't enough to be valued, let your absence teach a lesson that words never could. And if they truly regret it, they may learn something for the future, but that doesn't mean you have to go back. Let your silence be the most graceful ending, not loud, but weighty. Because the one who knows how to let go at the right time is always the strongest. And the void you leave, if deep enough, becomes a mirror for them to see exactly what they've lost. But you have lost nothing. You've simply chosen to return to where you truly belong. I used to think that silence was a sign of weakness, that it meant you didn't know how to fight back, didn't dare to speak up in your own defense. But the more I experienced life's collisions, the more I realized silence is not avoidance, but a conscious choice. a form of the highest emotional discipline. Some battles aren't won with shouting, but with inner steadiness. Some relationships aren't worth salvaging with words, but worth releasing with absence. And in some situations, the more you react, the more you let others control your state of mind. Choosing silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you no longer need to say it. When you live in alignment with your values, time and consistency will speak more clearly than words ever could. And if someone once failed to appreciate you while you were present, then let your departure be the deepest reminder that kindness should never be taken for granted again. If these reflections helped you look within, please like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss upcoming content. And if there's one message to carry with you after all of this, it's this: you don't need to speak loudly to be heard. You just need to live rightly so that words are no longer necessary. See you in the next video.